You know, we're always asking what makes a great leader tick. Is it just pure passion, a grand vision, or is it something a little more practical?
Take this quote from business author Susie Welch. For her, the real giants, the true visionaries, were never just in it for the cash. But what happens when profit is the main driver on a massive global scale? Well, that question sends us spinning back in time right to the dawn of our modern global economy.
Think about all the stuff we enjoy, right? From our morning coffee to the very phones in our hands. For centuries, global trade has brought us these comforts. But lurking behind it all is a really tough question, one people have been grappling with for over 300 years. What is the real human cost of the things we enjoy?
To really get this, we've got to jump back to the 18th century. This was an age where European empires were expanding and global trade was just exploding. And with things like joint stock companies, suddenly anyone could invest in and profit from business happening on the complete opposite side of the world. And that distance, it created a huge moral gap.
And get this isn't some 21st century hot take. This is Adam Smith, the father of modern economics, writing this way back in 1776. He saw that the shareholders of a company like the East India Company were so far removed from what was happening on the ground that they just became indifferent. They didn't see the people, they just saw the profits.
The source material we're digging into today really explores this idea. As European trade went global, this massive gulf opened up. Not just a physical one, but an ethical one. A consumer in London was worlds away from the enslaved person on a sugar plantation whose labor made their lifestyle possible.
And that brings us to our big idea today, economic conscience. What is it? Well, it's basically that little voice in your head, the one that asks, hey, where did this coffee come from? Or, who actually made my shirt? This wasn't some idea that just appeared out of nowhere. It had to be woken up.
So you've got this wild paradox, right? A person in Britain sipping their morning tea was physically connected, entangled with people thousands of miles away. But that same physical distance created an ethical distance, making it super easy to just not think about the human cost. The big question became, how do you shrink that ethical gap? Well, that comfortable ignorance couldn't last forever. Slowly but surely, new ways of thinking and new social forces started bubbling up, forcing people to actually look at their role in a system that was often built on pure exploitation.
So how did this happen? It wasn't just governments passing laws. It was culture, and it was people on the ground. Three things in particular were huge: the novel, political pamphlets, and the beginning of what we now call consumer activism. I mean, take the novel, for instance. Suddenly, writers like Daniel Defoe are telling these incredible stories that let readers put themselves in the shoes of a merchant or a colonist or even a slave trader. Fiction made the abstract world of global finance feel real and human. It built empathy.
And this simmering conscience, it was about to face its first major real-world test, the massive movement to abolish the slave trade. This is where all that thinking and feeling turned into real, powerful action. So check out this number, 300,000. Any guesses? Well, back in 1791, a bill to abolish the slave trade failed in Parliament. So 300,000 ordinary Britons decided to take matters into their own hands. They stopped buying and eating sugar produced by enslaved people. It was one of the very first large-scale consumer boycotts in history. And this quote, this was their rallying cry. It came from an incredibly popular pamphlet that went viral, 18th century style. The message was sharp and it was personal. It basically said, you can't blame others. If you buy the sugar, you're part of the system. Think about that. The whole idea of voting with your wallet isn't new. It was forged right here in the fight against slavery.
Okay, but as we know, history is never black and white. It's messy. And having an awakened conscience doesn't automatically make you a saint. In fact, things get really complicated when your morals start to clash with your bank account.
To see what I mean, let's meet a guy named John Holt. He was a big-shot British merchant doing business in West Africa in the late 1800s. And the sources we have describe him as being painfully ambivalent. A man who was genuinely torn up by the moral problems of his work.
And this is where it gets really weird. On the one hand, Holt was a legit humanitarian. He fought hard against the horrible atrocities happening in the Belgian Congo over the rubber trade. But at the same time, this same guy ran a nasty, racist campaign to destroy an African merchant, King Jaja of Opobo. And why? Because King Jaja wanted to cut out the middleman, Holt, and trade directly with England.
So what gives? How could one person be both things? Well, the source material is pretty clear. Holt's conscience had a firewall. He felt sorry for Africans when they were victims who needed protection. But he could never, ever see them as equals or, God forbid, competitors. In his mind, their proper place was as laborers, not as rival businessmen threatening his bottom line. But here's the kicker. Halt knew he was a walking contradiction. He actually wrote this down, questioning himself. You can almost hear him struggling with it. He knows something is off, that his idea of right and wrong is getting all twisted up by his own self-interest.
So why are we talking about some 19th century merchant? Because his story, and the story of those sugar boycotters, it's our story. This exact same struggle between our conscience and our interests is still playing out all around us today.
I mean, you can literally draw a straight line across 200 years, from the first laws making the slave trade a capital offense, to investigations into companies secretly helping the traders, right up to modern laws like the UK's 2015 Modern Slavery Act. The conversation just keeps going.
And the excuses, they sound spookily familiar. In the 1840s, merchants would say, "How could we possibly know what our partners are doing over in Africa?" Today, big companies talk about the opacity of their complex global supply chains. Critics call it pseudo-compliance, doing the bare minimum on paper without changing anything meaningful. That distance Adam Smith talked about, it's still a very convenient shield.
Which leaves us right back where we started, with the same tough question John Holt was asking himself. From the shareholder in the 1700s, to the merchant in the 1800s, to us today, we are all tangled up in this global system. What this history shows us is just how hard and how important it is to keep asking about the human cost. It's a tug-of-war that is very much still unresolved.